Welcome to Best Ball Whenever. I'm your host, Neil Orff. You can find me on Twitter at PlayerQDFS. I have a special guest today. He is Chris Spags. You can find him on Twitter at Chris Spags. You can find him on YouTube, the Splash Play Pod. Really happy to have Spags here. And I'm working on not doing 20-minute long intros. So I'm just going to right away ask you, Spags, how are you doing today? How have you been? What have you been up to? Anything you want to plug? How's it going?
I'm good. I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to be on Neil's channel. I've seen the subscriber count immediately surging, and only for Neil to just go, I'm not going to do a bunch of streams for you assholes. I'm going to make you guys wait. So no, I'm glad to be here. And I'm honestly curious how you're doing. I feel like, you're now a few weeks removed from your departure of Stochastic. So as somebody who's been there too, I'm just curious, how's your headspace? How are you feeling?
Yeah, I'm doing great. So yeah, you mentioned that I start my stream, and it started off like I was really happy with the subscriber count. Of course, I got the shout out on LOLs, like literally got, I don't know, 300, 400 new subscribers within 5 hours, I think, after LOLs gave me a shout out. So really appreciated that. But then I got super sick. So I started the channel, I was like, I'm raring to go. I got really sick in January. So that's kind of the reason that I delayed it a little bit. And then after it was already delayed several weeks, it was like hard to get into it. Doing NFL best ball in February is just a little.
What kind of degenerate would do that, Neil? What kind of
exactly. But overall, I'm doing well. I'm excited to try to start my own thing. I might end up with another site somewhere. I might just keep doing my own channel, doing different collaborations, etc. Haven't exactly figured out what the future holds, but I honestly I'm pretty excited for the future. I feel like I think anybody who's on my channel probably knows you already. We kind of have the same, or most people who know me from my Awesemo Stochastic connections, I think. And you and I were never actually coworkers. Like we were never actually full-time, I think, at Stochastic at the same time. I think I started shortly after you left Stochastic. So it's funny, I watched you when I was watching Awesemo streams all the time. You were on them, and of course I watch you on Splash, but we've only really done 2 or 3 streams together, I think. So
it's funny.
excited.
I feel like I know you deeply in the way that a lot of the other guys there. And that might be too, because, I watch the content. I feel like that's the one thing for Stochastic I always have to give them the credit for, that when I build lineups for NBA, I put on Live Before Lock. When I put on Showdown lineups, it would be you and Laffy or whoever, sometimes Eric. But that's sort of, I think, a great thing they've done to make those, really foundational pieces of everybody's DFS process. So I think that's probably part of it, is that we both feel like we know each other more through content. But for you, I feel like you're one of my old dear friends, Neil, even though we did not overlap, unfortunately.
I feel like I know, and we have done some streams together. It's not like this is our first stream ever together, but we're not we didn't used to do daily shows together, and now we're having a reunion. It's more we know each other, but we haven't actually streamed together. So I am excited to have you on. And of course, you were one of the first people I thought of when I was like, I want to start my own channel. And of course, one way in that we're different is I feel like I like doing streams more. It's kind of a push and pull with you do streams every day of the week, solo stream. You're doing a draft every single day on Splash Play, and I should pull up that channel. Reminder, everybody, go check out Splash Play if you're not already subscribed to Splash Play, because Spags does do literally every day. He's putting out content, and it is good content. Very obviously very, very sharp guy doing regular content on Splash Play. And you're doing every single day, though. You are doing solo pods, or almost every day. At least lately, you've been doing solo pods on Splash Play. And I'm I can't do it every day. I don't think it is tough. Because I have found I struggle with when I do these guest streams, having the conversations as the pick comes up, because you don't want to have the conversation about who we're picking too much in advance, and then the pick comes up, and having that conversation in a 30-second window is tough. So I'm trying to have guests on, and you were one of the first people I thought of, hell yeah, I want to do some streams with Spag. So I'm obviously happy to have you on the channel here. Maybe I'll get into some more solo pods, just because it is honestly a lot easier. Have you found that also, just having the conversation by yourself, making the picks yourself, rather than having somebody else there as you're making the picks, is in some ways easier, even if it's not quite as fun?
It's tough to say. I like doing the solo streams because I like, the reliability of, I know when I'm available, I know I can do it. I just turn on the camera, I go, and I've been lucky to kind of have the schedule to be able to do that. And, we'll see if that holds up forever. But I think, it's different vibes, where I sometimes wonder if my ceiling is capped by going solo. And then you see guys like Fantasy Flock out there doing really well. Ron Stewart doing really well, a guy who I would say does a good job, does a really good job, better perhaps than the first guy I mentioned. But, like those guys are doing solo and making it work. So for me, I just kind of wanted to know if I could do it. And, it's all relative to the success metrics where like, I don't think as a solo streamer, you probably be really hard to get up to like 30K views or something like that. But if you're happy with your community, if you're happy, for me, like I am with our Splash Play folks, they call themselves a Squirt Squad because we have the jizzy emoji for Splash Play, even though that was not the intent initially. But all these guys basically, like they're like friends to me. So when I hang out with them, I'm talking to them in chat. Like we're lucky to have like real regulars there. Same thing as a Stochastic has, same thing as my pal Pete Overzet has. As Neil mentioned with lulls, like those guys do the same thing. So I think if you make it fun for yourself, it'll be fun. But if you're treating it, if you treat it fully like a job, it probably does end up being like, oh, this is a job that takes a lot of time and also does not pay me nearly enough as a job would.
Yeah, true. Yeah, and I call my stream in part, so it's best ball whenever, as I said at the beginning, in part just so that I have that flexibility of just like, yeah, I'm just going to stream whenever I feel like it. I'm not going to commit to doing like a morning stream every day. I'm not going to commit to an evening stream every day. Of course, I do think consistency in this industry, like people really appreciate just knowing you're going to be on at this time, this day of the week, whatever. So, I got to figure that out to some extent too, but I kind of like having the flexibility, and that's kind of the, there's multiple parts. Like best ball whenever is a play on the best ball breakfast, best ball. I guess they're all mostly Pete Overzet streams, best ball after dark, all those names. Just like I'm just best ball whenever, but it's also just like you can stream best ball whenever. That's part of the fun.
Well, then you also had the best ball boardroom last year. You had the sex tape, the best ball brunch. So
best ball brunch, exactly.
Yeah, there was a period when I was first going to start doing Splash Play daily over the summer where we had to figure out things with Football Outsiders kind of screwing us on the pay and all that stuff. And I was like, I should just do like best ball vacation. And that's how I'll do it. It's like every day will be a themed vacation thing. I was like, why? I'll just fucking like, I don't need to do a sub brand of Splash Play that's already basically a niche on a niche. So you got to make it work for yourself.
Yeah, for sure. Shout out to chat guy Will Orfield, exclamation point. I had no idea who this guy, just some random guy. I am the guy. Yes, collaboration that I needed for sure to do a collaboration with Spags. Appreciate you, Brad. We will be joining. We'll be doing a draft very, very short. I want to have a brief conversation before we start. Chunk, good to see you. Bindles, good to see you. Brad, we already said Brad. Charles, good to see you as well. So I wanted to pull up Brick's tweet and talk about that briefly because he gave us this great conversation topic. So Brick sent us this screenshot of, and he had done this previously for Pete, Pat, and Davis, sent them their info here, and I thought it was really fascinating. I learned that I'm a bit of a nit when it comes to drafting. My standard deviation away from ADP is not all that large, under 8. You are just over 13, so you are a wild man in the draft streets. I honestly, I think that I probably need to actually I didn't pull it up, sorry. This is supposed to be on the screen. I think that I'm okay with it for the early rounds, like being closer to ADP, because I think that I have read that in general, like ADP is pretty good. Like you want to be a little bit closer to ADP, but I feel like this is where I need to work. So standard deviation after, I think this means after pick 167, I am very much a nit here, and you are a wild man there. And I think that is the way to do it. Like that is, and I had this conversation yesterday with Beimfor. That's where you can get the Kyron Williams, Puka Nacua, and Tank Dell all on the same team. Like, because if you are drafting by ADP, you're never going to have that trio on the same team. Whereas if you get a little bit different. So what were your takeaways from this? I know we just got this like half an hour ago. Brick sent this to us. But do you have any initial thoughts, takeaways from this little bit of info he sent us on how we drafted? This is, by the way, this is how we drafted in BBM3, BBM4, I guess, last year.
Yeah, I mean, I was stoked. I saw the follow. So there's a follow-up tweet that Brick posted as well to Neil, where he's like, Spags, out of all the people who won 50 maxed, which I think was like 900 people or so. Yeah, I was the 9th loosest drafter, I believe. So Brick said that. So I don't know that I actually do draft that loosely. I guess like I think for the earlier part, like the pre pick 162 thing, I probably am reaching for Christian Watson too much. Would be like I think that drove up my
and Anthony Richardson, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, a little bit of AR too, but definitely the Watson thing was when I had Justin Jefferson a lot with the first pick, and I saw Watson there. I was like, I'm going to get Watson on the turn. Like that was one of the moves I was going to. Probably had 10 drafts with that. So that probably inflated my early part. The after 167, I think, is more so because I do try to get different combos there. I don't think I hit the nuts as well. I did a lot of tank last year, but it was not over the field on Puka. It was not over the field on Kyron. So I think it's more that I do believe that you're trying to take different shots there on those late guys. And that's sometimes the tough part as well, is like you fall in love with late guys. I know last year I really liked Terrace Marshall in the 18th round, just because of the fact that he was a great, EPA metric guy, expected points added metric that I always cite in my content. He was great the year before, and I thought, new coaching staff, he's going to have a shot here. But they bring in the free agents, they bring in Jonathan Mingo, and he just doesn't get on the field. And I think those are the things too, where maybe you're right about the guy. Maybe Terrace Marshall would have been better than DJ Chark. I think he would have been if he got the same opportunity, but he didn't get it. And I think that's where I'm a little bit more, you want to spread that around. You want to have so that Terrace Marshall amount becomes 6% instead of 12%. And I think that's my main goal when I am trying to deviate a little bit more later in the draft.
Yeah, and I think that is very sharp. I did a collaboration yesterday with Eric Bienfor from Spike Week. We had a conversation applying some of the DFS, like applying what we have learned from DFS, because you as well, we all have DFS backgrounds. Is kind of where we come from. So like applying what we learned from DFS to best ball. And one thing that I thought about was, and you kind of just alluded to this, is you can't really do ownership. Like you can't really factor in ownership easily in like just like straight ownership in best ball, because for the first 14 weeks of the year, you are the only person with that player in your room. Like it's going to be that player. You're the only one who has them in your pod. And then it's kind of unpredictable who is going to be low owned in rounds 2, 3, and 4. Like you can try to do like Jameson Williams last year. You could kind of assume that he wasn't going to be super high owned because he was out for the first 6 weeks, maybe Alvin Kamara to some extent, and rookies, stuff like that. So there are ways that you can like sort of try to guess who is going to be low owned in the later rounds. But other than like last round picks, players who don't get drafted in every single draft, it's kind of hard to for the first 14 rounds of the draft, at least, like all those players are going to be taken in every single draft. So it's just a matter of how good did they do during the regular season. That's going to factor into how much they are owned. But what you alluded to is combinatorial ownership, like trying to get to different combos. That is a way that you can get different right away. And so that's something that I'm trying to factor that in a little bit more. And I think that what this chart tells me, the chart that we have up here, is I didn't do enough of that last year because I was drafting too close to ADP. The closer you're drafting to ADP, the more likely you are to just end up with a lot of combos that a lot of other people are going to have as well. So maybe I need to be branching out a little bit more, getting a little bit further from ADP just to have some more unique combos when we get to the playoff rounds. Is kind of one of my takeaways from this chart.
Yeah. I'd say if you're drafting close to ADP, you're probably drafting a little bit more for the floor, where, it's still relative to, like, I'll always remember the Hayden Winks, like, bell curve chart where, every time you're taking somebody 12 picks before ADP, somebody got that guy 12 picks after ADP. So you really have to think about that too. But, it's still about, for the week 17 stuff, especially when you know that, the tough part, I think, of last year for me is like a lot of my personal theories were right, but they were like monkey's paw wishes versions of it, where AR, the most efficient, fantasy quarterback in terms of the per quarter stuff, but he plays 4 games. The Minnesota game ended up going off, but not with Justin Jefferson and Christian Watson. It goes off with Jaden Reed, who ends up winning Fareed Shaheed $1 million or $3 million. So I think that's sort of the tough part of all the stuff. But I think with the combinatorial ownership, what you're doing is giving yourself just, your best shots of different configurations overall. If you do have things right that you're drafting over your portfolio, for me this year, I want to be tethered to a 16% max to 24% in a real outlier, but really ideally want to land closer to 20% as my max for everybody, because I think there's just a little bit too much risk I've seen the last few years going to 30%, even on a few guys. So I think for me, that's the part of it too, is like, okay, you have your 20%, you then want to have your 20% where this is coming in stacks. This is coming in stacks with the number 2 receiver. This is coming in stacks with the number 3 receiver. I think if you really, and I'm confident based on what I know of the battle royale streets out there and guys like the Badge Bros, there are people out there that are really fine tuning that to an extent where maybe they're doing it too much, but I think they're probably going to be getting closer to a nut outcome if you really are that granular of saying, I'm going to take Jamar Chase with T. Higgins here. I'm going to take Jamar Chase with Josephus here. I'm going to take Jamar Chase with whoever, with Chase Brown here. I think that's sort of the thing that the sharper players are getting to, and it's going to make it more like an optimizer, but people doing it, still manually.
Yeah, and that's so I've never really drafted with tools, and I've still got this brick screenshot pulled up. I know he does the draft caddy, which I downloaded last year, and then like immediately it was like Underdog is not going to allow you to use this. So I think that he has refined it to be usable in a way that is allowed on Underdog. So maybe I'll try doing that this year, using some of the tools that are out there, because that's kind of a better indicator of like you can see quickly what combos do I have, and maybe try to diversify a little bit in that sense. ANS asks, am I going to do any dinger drafts? I'm so bad at best ball or season long baseball. I used to love season long fantasy baseball. I used to be like obsessed with it. Recently, I have not done as much, and I have not done a ton of best ball for baseball. So maybe I'll try and talk with the Badge Bros. Maybe I can do like they teach me how to do it kind of an episode, or maybe I'll just go on their channel and try to learn how to do it. So I'll probably do some dingers at some point, just as a way to find different types of contests. Once I get bored doing NFL all the time in February, I might do some dinger, and maybe I'll have see if one or two of the Badge Bros will join me to talk about it, because I think I could use their help there. Good to see you, Nick. And appreciate you, Bindles. One other thing that I wanted to say before we jump into a draft, and we are about to jump into a draft, is I really appreciated your rookie videos. It was funny. These are to me, this is the type of content that I love. You just broke down. So Spags made 4 videos, rookie previews, position by position, tight ends, running backs, wide receivers, quarterbacks. You can see them here on the Splash Play page. And I find that to be like, that is the kind of content that I love. And you said it right at the beginning of the video, like, nobody really watches this. I'm kind of doing this for myself. I'm like, I can't understand why anybody would not want to watch that type of content where you're breaking down the rookies. But I just wanted to give a shout out to those rookies. And so one thing that I found funny, so I had already started doing drafts when I discovered these videos. So I kind of knew rookie ADPs. And it was funny to me in some ways, like hearing you talk about different players, like so I'll start with running backs. One player that you were very high on, one of your flag plans, was Audric Estimate. You talked about, you were like, you said at one point, he is my favorite running back of the past 2 years. And then you walked it back. You were like, well, Bijan is there. And you walked it back a little bit. So I'm like, to hear that, I'm like, man, he is going way too late in drafts, because he's going like 165 at the time. I think he's even come up a little higher since then. But it was funny hearing you talk about how much you love him, and then watching one of your draft teams, and you're like, well, I can probably push Audric Estimate beyond round like 14. So it's just same thing like Marvin Harrison. You're like talking about, he is so good. He's like one of the best rookie prospects that we've ever had. And then you're like, so if he's going where JSN was going last year, I'm going to love him. And then of course now he's actually mid second round. So yeah, it feels like all of these rookies have been steamed up so much. How do you, like, I don't know, adjust to the new rookies? Like, are you taking these rookies where they're going right now, even though they are going like higher than maybe you want them to be?
I would say for my personal prep, and you're right. So like the edge that was there, where part of the reason I started doing this prep process in January was like, okay, I want to be ready for whenever the big board launches, assuming that it was going to launch the same Super Bowl timing as it did last year. Ends up launching earlier. So I thought that, okay, this is perfect. Then I could get in, I'll have an edge for a couple of weeks, and then the ADPs will stabilize. In reality, that edge was there for maybe 3 days. Like Audric Estimate was going to the 200s, Jane Daniels was going to the 170s, like Brock Bowers was going to the 130s. And now that all is really caught up pretty fast. And I think it's more of an enthusiasm thing for people. There's also better information. I know one thing people point me to a lot is Legendary Upside is doing a lot of stuff around rankings and all of that. And for them, Audric Estimate, like I was saying, I felt like he should be going 150s at a minimum. Then Legendary Upside comes out and they're like, he should be going 150s or 155. It's like, okay. So now I got the confirmation bias for myself, where these are very, a team of sharp people now agreeing with my take, but also then pricing out any value I had for assessing them where I did. And I think that's where, that's kind of the pain point for me, is I really felt like, because, I was there early, the good news, like a lot of people in our community were along with me, and like, I like this guy too. Like, oh, I dug in a little bit. I like this about him. But then they were like sniping me on the guys I wanted to get, which kind of hurts the fun of the draft process. But it's all a balance. And like you were talking about earlier, with streaming drafts, it's like, you kind of have to be willing to give away some EV, but then you learn to adapt and get EV in different ways. And I think that's sort of how I view it. But yeah, for rookies, I think it's so much fun. And the videos are like boring. Like I know the videos I did, because it's just an Excel spreadsheet and me talking about what I'm seeing on a data sheet. But it's now like last year, I really got like a lot of things right, to the point. And I did this privately for myself the year before. And I'm like, okay, I think I think I'm really good at this, and I'm hoping that people follow will have results. But this year, there are some guys too, where there's a lot of enthusiasm for good guys. And then there's like a lot of enthusiasm for Keon Coleman and Lad McConkey and guys who are just kind of air yards merchants at Washington. And I kind of think that there's too much enthusiasm for everybody. So the skill is hopefully that you're being enthusiastic for the right guys, and less enthusiastic on the guys that I think are going to come down, 50 picks after the draft.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I guess I asked you like two different questions within that. So I was struggling with like, how do I reconcile the like, I love Audric Estime. He is my favorite running back of the past 2 years, or like it sounded like you were like close to as high on him as you were on Bijan, with then like, but he's going too high at pick 150, whereas like Bijan like clearly was going much higher than that. So, was that maybe just an overstatement at one point about
It
how
probably
much
a
you
little
love
bit
Estime?
hyperbolic because of the enthusiasm and the fact that like I've seen video of him and I only grow to like him more the more I see it. He's basically like an in shape Leonard Fournette as a comp that I've fallen the most in love with for him. But I think the tough part is sort of balancing those two twains where I'm excited about Audric Estime for what I presume his draft capital will be and where he's getting drafted right now, like his real life draft capital and where he's getting drafted right now. For Bijan, it's like you knew he was going to go in the first round. It was very unlikely he wasn't going to do that. So he was priced accordingly for that. For a big board kind of tournament, I think the only advantage you have is like, okay, nobody's on the fact that like last year with AR, Anthony Richardson, I was really like, okay, he's got all the stuff that I think is going to really drive him up over the course of these next few weeks. This time period of February to March till whenever the draft hits is when all the college football fans come out and they go, oh, this guy, I watched his games in college and he's not good. And as a result, these guys then don't get fully properly priced, or at least, last year they definitely did not. And I think I'm hoping that's the case this year too, where guys who watch Notre Dame, go like, oh, Audric Estime, he sucks and blah, blah, blah. And then they ignore the fact that there's a wealth of data that can tell you that he doesn't suck. Right. That's what I'm hoping. Jay Daniels now is the same thing, where there are people on Twitter going, he should be a running back. Like literally people have made this joke in my chat, but like there are people out there that think he should be a running back because they just they don't understand anything. And I think that's the part that, you try to, if you have your North Star there aligned, and you also have a good read, like, Neil and I have been doing these drafts. Neil, I think you've been doing it a little longer than I have, doing a good volume of drafts, but this is going to be my 5th year, I think, doing some amount of drafts, maxing it out 3rd year. So I think for me, like, you just build that callus a little bit more of knowing how the markets are going to react in ADP. The main change this year, again, is just a lot of enthusiasm for what happened last season. And then for some guys they hear about on social media, I think that's gotten frothier. But hopefully, the more you do drafts, the better your compass gets of like, is this guy going to go up? Is he going to go down? Where can I get him? Where can I not get him?
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess if you're trying to, cap yourself at like 20% on individual players, you also don't want to be taking an Audric Estime every single draft. Even if you do love him, you got to like factor in actual ADP to some extent if you're going to try to cap yourself there. I also wanted, so I was thinking about starting like giving you my overview of what I remember for each position, but you should just go watch these videos and we'll talk about the rookies throughout as we do the drafts, but highly recommend. I thought that these were excellent videos. And as I recall, did you say that you make your spreadsheets available to people, or am I misremembering that?
Yeah, the people who are paying members of Splash Play, I give them that as part of it, but they're all available if you are a Splash Play member. I think you can go through the community tab and see previous ones. I have to figure out a better way. I'm sure there's something you might run into too, Neil, if you do your own thing, but like how you disseminate information to people is kind of a weird thing. If you are just going mostly through a YouTube channel, like you kind of have to have a Discord. Yeah, and it's a lot of stuff to figure that out if you want to. But yes, it's available if you are a paying member of Splash. If you want to pay $5, you can see all my rookie data.
Is that just on YouTube to subscribe,
yes,
or where do people go to subscribe? Okay, I'll have to subscribe. I don't think that I have. I always, I struggle with the nomenclature, I guess, of like subscribe versus like paid subscribe.
Oh yeah, it's like join versus subscribe.
Right.
I try not to be exclusionary, but like, the Squirt Squad, again, our branding here, the real Squirt Squad are the people that pay me $5 a month. Everybody else is just like, honorary badges.
Yeah, it's a funny thing where it's like I would love to just stream and like not try to monetize anything, but also I'm trying to do this for my job, so I'm like got to figure out how to monetize at some point. So yeah, I totally understand the struggle of like you just want to share and have fun and have a community, but at the same time you got to figure out.
I just want 1,000 people to pay me $5 a month. And then I can just chill out, and I'll give you guys. Then I'll hire Neil, and we'll
exactly.
Start the cycle all over again.
One final plug that I want to give, and Spags, I would love. So I'm starting a new podcast. So people might remember I did the High Stakes podcast back when I was with Stochastic. I'm going to do something not the exact same thing, but another podcast where I'm going to have rotating guests on to just kind of talk about DFS, best ball, whatever. And of course, I would love to have Spags on at some point in the future. First episode is tomorrow, though, and I'm going to be having Sacrilegious on, which I am super excited about. He's a really, really sharp guy. Anybody who has seen and Sacrilegious in any videos knows that he is extremely sharp. So I'm very excited to do that. That'll be tomorrow night, I believe. I want to say 8 o'clock Central. I'm still working out the name, the branding, all of that kind of stuff for what the pod is going to be. But tomorrow night, so Wednesday night, and I think it's going to be a regular Wednesday night thing for that one. I'm going to be doing regular podcasts with sharp guests.
Don't forget to ask him about the Sortino ratio, because I learned about that today. I didn't know that Legendary Upside has their rankings account for the Sortino ratio, which is the point of diminishing returns for upside versus downside and all that.
Oh.
And somebody asked me that with no provocation. Like I follow stuff tangentially in the industry. I don't follow everything. And somebody's like, what do you think about the Sortino ratio by sacrilegious? I'm like, what the fuck are you like? These are 3 words. I know what sacrilegious is. I don't know what the other 2 are relative to that.
Interesting. I need to get into more of their written content. Like I watch a lot of their videos on Legendary Upside, but I consume most of my content. I guess I'm a millennial. Like it's sort of as you get younger, the more likely you are to just consume via like listening to stuff instead of actually reading it yourself. But I know that Sack does a lot of written content, which I need to get into a little bit. Appreciate you, Mike Yocastic here, and I am the Kai asking, is this Best Ball Brunch 2? Yes, it is. Spags and I are about to fuck. All right, let's get into a draft though first before we fuck.
Actually tickling Neil's taint right now from underneath.
We're about to join in 3, 2, 1. If you want to join us, of course, there's a little like time difference between us and the audience, so when I do a countdown, it actually means nothing. But yeah, if you want to join us, join now.
I do the hot start which is now to the point where like people ask me like and are really trying to time it out so they can get into rooms, which it's not that hard now on the big board. When it comes time for BBM, we'll see how people can get in and all that. But like it's funny because like people really do like being a part of stream drafts, even though you end up drafting against sharper people, and then they sometimes snipe you, and then you go like, I thought you were sharp.
Right. I thought we were friends. Yeah. All right. Born Loser. I know Born Loser. And I always forget who it is. I know him. He's a sharp guy. Oh, is that the poker player? It might be the poker player for
the multiple.
I'm blanking on names now.
Dan something.
Dan Zach.
Zach, yes.
Is that Dan Zach?
Not Dan Back. Dan Back is the Roto Grinders guy. Dan Zach is the poker guy. That's always throws me for a loop in my brain every time.
And there's another fantasy football guy with a very similar name to Dan Zach, so that's why I get it confused. But I think that this is the poker player. Dan Zach is Born Loser. Any other names that you recognize here?
No, I think you got mostly a clean room here because there was only one spot open when you hopped in. So I think, yeah,
true.
I get a lot of my familiar people in most drafts for me now.
Do you really?
Yeah, it's funny too because like the other day I basically started at a weird time. Like I think I started 1 minute later than usual. So people then were in an overflow draft before me, and I got like a bunch of comments of people who were like, "Oh, like I liked this draft a lot more because it wasn't just regulars who were like doing things. You kind of got to work the room differently." That's again another thing that's a balance that you learn more as you do this shit.
Yeah, definitely something I need to work on. Giving people that little countdown. All right, CMC goes 1. I've learned that people like, this is one thing that I've learned is people like you to pull up the board so they can see what is happening. Yes. I saw that you did something where like you shared something different and you like can full screen it, which is probably something I need to learn to do at some point.
I don't do that, but I do it a different thing where I have like a layout where I moved it on StreamYard, where you do custom layouts on StreamYard. But I know I think it's the Badge Bros do a thing where they have the full board going and all that.
Okay.
And people like different things I think Ron Stewart does that too, where he like does the full screen of the board. But I like letting people show where I'm clicking around and I can show like where ADPs are and all of that. And I don't know. I think Neil, you're the bear. Would I have the bottom?
I'm definitely the bear. Like there's no denying that I'm the bear. I don't know I think that means that I would be the top, but I don't know exactly for sure.
No, I just hope we can share. I don't want to just get. I don't just want to get sodomized here. I'd like.
We'll figure it out as we go along. We'll figure it out.
That's the thing, Neil. Not a lot of best ball drafts will offer that opportunity to talk about who's going to be the top and who's going to be
true. I mean, when you're doing it by yourself, like you don't have the opportunity to have these conversations of who is the top, who is the bottom. OMG says Neil needs Probably. So tell me a little. So I didn't realize that you are the founder of Probly until today. I also cannot sports bet here in Minnesota, sadly. So wow. So I can't really use it as much. But tell me a little bit about Probly.
Yeah, so Probably was a tool basically, and it's something. Well, we're gonna make our pick coming up here, so I'll try to make my spiel not too bad. But
you want to wait until what if you want?
Yeah, yes. Let's make the pick. I mean, I'd go Amon-Ra or Bijan if you really want to be a little RB piggy.
No, I like Amon-Ra. I like that pick. We were just talking before the stream about how much easier it is to do zero RB. Like, it just like the drafts look so much cleaner when you do zero RB this year in particular, because wide receivers have gotten streamed. But yeah, go ahead and
Yeah, so with
about
probably and OG Mans fan Jason says that because he was one of our first year, like a person paid for a year in advance, so he gave me the big cosign there, and now he's made I think $2,500 by my count, maybe more that I'm not aware of, just off of our data. So feeling very good about him being an early sign up. But we track data from the winningest sports books around the world to find the best bets. You know, I say every day across every sport, across every league. Basically, it's just a mathematical profitability equation where we're tracking real live data, you know, in real time and giving you updates throughout the course of a day, but really simplified, really stripped down. Where Neil and I both work for Stochastic. Odd Shopper is their product. They do a similar thing. I don't want to blow any spots, but I did have a meeting with their head of product there, and our ROI is a little bit better, but it's also a simpler tool. So I think we've done something good. For me to even be in the ballpark of anything Stochastic does, honestly, I feel great about. But it's really a mobile forward product designed to make it easy to get in good bets without even knowing the sport. So probably.com/subscribe if you want to get on there, save 50%, or check Probably on the App Store, and there's 7-day free trials going too. And there we go. I got the plug-in.
That was great. That was a great elevator pitch in very brief time that we had. Do we go wide receiver here? Do we just?
I wouldn't hate some MHJ if you want to reach a little.
You want to go MHJ? All right, let's do it. He's fun. I mean, I like some MHJ. I think I usually take DJ Moore in that spot, but I also try to diversify a little bit, and I think I probably have a lot of this combo. So yeah, I like that.
I like DJ Moore too. I've been finding it hard to get, and granted, it hasn't happened a ton of times, but hard to get DJ Moore and Caleb Williams to align for me in draft rooms when I have taken DJ Moore on stream. So I've been trying to figure out if that's really what I want to do. Harrison, I'm just really excited about, and I think it's the thing that I always say with drafts, like, you got to pay the ADP these guys are going at if you want to get exposure. And like, I don't think Harrison's coming down. I guess the shot would be that he goes somewhere where he's not the wide receiver one. And he's kind of like a T. Higgins, somebody's Jamar Chase. I don't know what that would be. But I think that's the one risk point for him. But him going this high it's crazy for a wide receiver to see. But I think it's fully deserved. He's an amazing player. I don't know if you have a sentiment on him yet.
So I haven't watched it. And that was so I also listened to Bime4 and Karain did a 4-hour long.
I did see that. I did not listen to it, but I presume it's full of nice little tidbits from both their little beautiful minds.
Yes, it is. It is great also. But one thing that they said on there that really resonated with me, maybe made me think that I need to dive in a little bit, is Pat said, and Eric agreed, that he is a believer in, you can just watch the highlights. Like, a lot of people poo-poo it. Like, you can't just watch the highlights and you're only going to see the good of players. You're not going to learn that much. You're not going to see their flaws, which is true. Like, you're obviously clearly missing something by just watching the highlights, but you can at least, I think, learn from what they're good at, or at least this is what these guys were saying. And I've always been hesitant to watch the highlights just for the reason that I don't want to be tainted by, like, oh wow, look at that 70-yard run, he's so fast, he's going to be amazing, like that is the player he is. But I think that they made some good points, that it's like, yeah, if you watch everybody's highlights though, then you see the good of every player, and maybe you can learn something. So I don't watch college football, so I don't really have a strong take on Marvin Harrison Jr. I only know what I've heard, but I think that is something that I might do, is try and go watch some highlights of these players to try and get a better feel for at least who they are. Because sometimes I don't even know coming in, like last year, Tank Dell, I had no idea he was a little guy. I was like, yeah, he sounds like he's a good wide receiver with big upside. I had no idea though that he was a tiny little dude. Well,
so for the sake of just, helping out my friend Neil here to give him more of a base, I guess I'll give you guys some fun stats as we go, because I do have my data sheets here too. Harrison, 35% target per route run rate, very elite for a guy playing at his level at Ohio State. 0.43 EPA per target, also a good number. Could have been better with a better QB. It was better the year before with CJ Stroud, but he's great. He's also primarily operating out wide, which is a big distinction for guys, because in every draft class, you end up with a ton of slot guys. Not a lot of guys being great out wide, but 7 targets out wide compared to 2.7 out of the slot. Efficient on both, though he was more efficient out of the slot, which is going to happen. But the big thing for him, deep balls, 1.8 deep balls a game. So throws to 20 plus air yards, a 1.6 EPA per target. So basically every time they targeted him downfield, he was adding about 1.6 points worth of value by just getting a target, by the act of throwing him the ball. So like, he does everything here. He also commands red zone targets at a high rate, 1.9 red zone targets per game, highest in this draft class as well. So all the stuff you're looking for is there. And the fact that he's going to probably go number 3 or number 4, I guess worst case number 5. He's going to go somewhere with a draft capital where they have to feed him immediately to make it pay off. So for Harrison, hard to fail. I think Neighbors is also a very fun pick. I would prefer Harrison, but there's definitely a world where I think in year 1, Neighbors can outperform him. It just depends on who gets the pristine, you're the alpha receiver landing spot, and who gets the one where there's somebody blocking you, like DK Metcalf or something. If you get DK Metcalf blocking you like JSN along with Lockett, you're probably not going to get there. So that's the tough part.
All right. So I want to talk about Malik Neighbors, but first I want to do our draft pick. And I also wanted to touch on something on screen. I hadn't seen this. Chunk the Deuce says, what are y'all's thoughts on Justin Fields' social media movement today? Unfollowing the Bears, now following Drake London, Kyle Pitts, and Bijan Robinson. I mean, that would be fun as hell if he goes, although it's probably not the best case for those players. Like, I've been drafting a ton of the Falcons, just being like, they're going to have a better offensive coordinator, they're going to have, or better head coach, I guess, and they're going to have probably a better quarterback. So I've been drafting a ton of them. I don't think that Justin Fields going to the Falcons would be the best for their skill players. Do you have any thoughts on this?
That's one that I've been targeting a little bit. Let's make.
Oh, it is our team. Yeah, sorry. So we could take Sam Laporta and try and go for a Detroit staff.
Yeah, I would go for that. It's probably a little chalky at this point of a draft, but you just don't know where Laporta gets steamed up to. And like thing that stuck with me last year was like I was kind of avoiding Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill, double stacks at one point because I'm like, everybody's getting these, they're too chalky. Then at a certain point in BBM, it goes away. Obviously, big board BBM, not the same thing. But I think taking these guys for the stack when you can get them is there. The risk point, I think, for Detroit would just be like they bring in a real stud wide receiver too, and then you have them and Jameson Williams competing for targets. But I don't think that's the most likely.
Yeah. Okay.
There's something we were talking about that I'm now blanking on.
I'm also blanking on. I was going to ask you about Malik Neighbors, but I think that you were in the middle of talking about Justin Fields, Atlanta.
Oh yeah, so yeah, Justin Fields. Yeah, so Fields going to Atlanta, I think, is one of the spots. Pittsburgh was trying to like rumor their way into Fields too, but I think that's looking more like Pittsburgh gets Russell Wilson, Atlanta gets Justin Fields. It's probably not the best thing for that, for the QB play you need for what you'd expect for Atlanta's offense to be, where they're bringing over Zach Robinson, who is the QB's coach, and I think assistant offensive coordinator for the Rams. He's basically bringing the Rams offense over. That's the expectation. So like, the one thing that's interesting, though, is that the Rams for years wanted a mobile QB. That's part of why they were flirting with John Wolford a couple of years ago, because they wanted to bring that aspect to the games, and you can't do that with Matthew Stafford. So if you see a Rams offense with a mobile QB and Fields can continue being the best version we saw for the Bears, I think it's a tremendous win for everybody. And I also think London is like one of the best picks at ADP right now. So I'm on board with it. It would hurt Bijan. Like, it definitely would hurt Bijan getting those goal line touches taken away. But, you know, that's the trade-off.
Hateful Hawk just hatefully drafted Drake London immediately after you said he's one of the best picks on the board. We are up in 3 picks. So you think it would hurt Bijan, but not necessarily the pass catchers?
I think it would make Bijan more efficient, but it would be harder for him to get that volume of touches, just like at the goal line, especially, which is where you want it.
All right. I've been a big fan of Jalen Waddle. Having him at 41 seems really nice to me, but is there anybody else that you love in this range?
Yeah, that's a good enough discount. I'm perfectly fine at this point taking some nice ADP drops if they come to you, and that's yeah. I like Cooper Kupp too. Like, I think he's come up a little bit where he was back in the 50s for a while. Now he's up at 41, as you can see on the screen. I think he's a little bit undervalued too. Like, especially if you're not getting Puka early, I think the bet on them is kind of the same. You need Stafford to stay upright. You need the team to be competitive for another year. But Kupp is, you know, we know what he's been in the past. He's got to stay healthy. But I think for him going 40 picks after where Puka goes, like, I don't know, he's probably a little too cheap.
Tyler asking, who's this handsome money hat man? Yes, that is Steve Spagnuolo. As he also goes by Spags, right?
He does. He's actually, there was a point in my career back when I was at Barstool where I could search Spags, and the only thing that would come up would be me, and that was after he had gotten fired from the Rams and was basically like kind of out of the league. And now he's back, and if you search Spags, I'm fucking nowhere. It's all Steve Spagnuolo. People talk about his blitzing.
Rude. That sucks. Yeah. That's bullshit.
Hurt my vanity searching.
I do want to say, since people brought up your money hat, nobody has commented on my beautiful hat yet.
I saw the hat. I couldn't tell what it was, but I do like the hat.
I just got this. We were at a resort here in Minnesota called Grandview Lodge. We went to Grandview Lodge for my mom's 70th birthday, and they have a golf simulator, which I didn't get to use. Apparently, you have to have a reservation. But as I was in the gift shop, my wife saw this hat and was like, I mean, you like at Stochastic, my nickname became Flannel God at Stochastic. It's become like the promo code I use, just flannel. I'm dropping the God part, but like keeping flannel as part of my brand, because it's basically all I wear. My wife was like, you kind of need this hat. And I was like, yeah, that is, it's a Paul Bunyan and Babe the Blue Ox.
Okay.
Is in Minnesota. I want to say Hibbing. I don't remember where it is in Minnesota. There's a huge statue of Paul Bunyan, but his legend lives here. So yeah, this is a Paul Bunyan hat that my wife pointed out to me in the gift shop at Grandview Lodge, and I thought it was a cool hat.
I mean,
it also has flannel on the underside.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Yeah, I like that. That's
Yeah.
very, very street style of you. Yeah, I
I
feel like anything you wear, I mean, this is something I've learned too. And it's probably not all the way true because I know TikTok people like Sal Vetri and Josh Larkey, I think I've mentioned this before about like wearing fucking floral shirts on a TikTok and it gets more attention. But I
yeah.
think ultimately for me, for YouTube, like I started wearing the hat every day because I realized like years ago at Stochastic grew to hate the money hat because I didn't want to keep doing the bit. And
Yeah.
in reality, I should have leaned into it 10 times more and just wore the money hat every day because the more you have a brand and people associate you with it, like, you know, it's different for animation, but why do you think the Simpsons look the same all the time? It's because that's what gets the brand going.
Right.
And, you know, for human beings, same thing. If they know you as the guy in the money hat, they're going to know you the guy in the money hat forever. Maybe they'll learn me as a person too. That's a hope.
No, you're just the money hat guy. You're never going to be anything else. Just accept it.
One trick
Yeah.
pony.
It's funny, like, because I wear flannels throughout the winter. It is like, I don't know, like 90% of my wardrobe in the winter is just wearing random flannels. But then I wear, like in the summer, I mostly wear V-necks. And whenever I put on a t-shirt for the first time, people are like, Where's the flannel? What the fuck are you doing? Who is this guy? People get mad. People get mad when I'm not in
Shaking
my
you
flannel.
violently.
Yeah.
But, you know, you got to show off that bare chest hair when the.
Yeah, I mean, any way I can, in the flannel, in the V-neck, whatever it is.
So Romo Odunze went. Do you have any early? I won't even spoil it. Do you have any early sentiments on him?
I do not. I don't have any. Yeah, tell me yours.
I think he's got to test well at the combine. That's the main thing. If he tests well at the combine, this is going to be true of any rookie. If they have really great RAS scores, it's redundant because RAS score has the word score in it. But if they have really good combine testing relative to their size and all that, they're going to go up a lot in draft capital usually. For Odunze, I think if he doesn't test well, I think he's like, this is going to be a little bit of hyperbole, but I think he's a borderline UFL guy if he doesn't test well athletically.
Oh wow, really?
He got fed so many deep targets that he's not Tez Walker. Tez Walker got fed the most by Drake May, and it's to the point where I don't think he's very good. Dude's still good in advanced analytics, but to me, he's like a guy that if he runs like a 4.6, 4.7, he is really swimming uphill because Washington just fed like more air yards to their receivers than any team in college football last year. And I think for Odunze, like Neighbors is a legit stud talent, MHJ legit stud talent. I think Troy Franklin is also legit stud talent. I have questions about Odunze, and if he's not fast, I think he is in a lot of trouble.
Interesting. All right, it is almost our pick. I have some thoughts here. Okay, I was going to say Trey McBride could have been an option. Go bully double tight end for the stack with Marvin Harrison. I want to have that conversation. We could go with your guy Anthony Richardson here, or
that would be a fun compliment to presumably getting Jared Goff for hopefully a reasonable price tag later.
True. Yeah, I don't hate that. The other option would be Terry McLaurin and go for, our late Drake May, but I'm good. Let's just take your guy because I have you. I feel like it's on brand to take Anthony Richardson here, so I like that pick. So I have concerns about Trey McBride. Actually, I still kind of want to finish it. Which one of these stud rookie wide receivers, top three? I feel like I heard one of them is really small. Is that
Neighbors is smaller? Yeah. So Odunze, his program height and weight is 6'3", 215. Harrison 6'4", 205. Neighbors 6 foot 200, which kind of could be 5'10", 185-ish, which we'll see. But Neighbors, like he's Tank Dell with more juice, so I think that he's perfectly fine. 32% avoided tackle rate, which would be ironically close to Quentin Johnston, the most out of last year's class. But he's smaller, so like he gets some kind of Debo-y touches. I think that Neighbors is a very exciting prospect and okay with him, but he is a little bit on the smaller side. Yeah.
Okay, good. I was thinking one of them was like 5'8", like a truly tiny dude, but apparently that's
Malachi Corley is probably the smallest guy that's going to get something resembling okay draft capital. He's 5'11", or like listed at 5'11", so probably like 5'10", 5'9". But I think that's basically it.
All right, we are up in 2 picks. So we can make our pick and then we have a little bit of time.
It's a tough pocket, man. This is not my favorite pocket.
Really tough. I hate this pocket, which last year, this is part of the reason I was okay. We can take who we want. Do we want another wide receiver? So we have Anthony Richardson, Amon-Ra, Marvin Harrison, Jalen Waddle, Sam Laporta. I don't hate Tyler. I've taken some Tyjae Spears around here. I don't hate that.
I'm cool with that. I'm cool with breaking our running back fast for him. And
I have not been taking a ton of Alvin Kamara. I feel like that maybe I'm just wrong in skipping over him, but
he's probably a cut candidate. I mean, he's one of Nick Chubb, Joe Mixon are the ones that are in every ESPN athletic article they're putting out right now about guys that could get cut. I don't know for sure it's going to happen, but Tyjae, to me, I think he's now more close to appropriately valued. But he opened in the late 80s. And it's like Derrick Henry's not coming back. Like no matter what, he's
Right.
not coming back. So you're worried about Tajay getting another back in front of him. But if he doesn't, like he was a monster in terms of the pass game and the run game in college.
Yeah, it's kind of what I've been thinking. Like he seems like he is the RB1 right now for the Texans, not the Texans, the Titans. I don't know. So I've been drafting a lot of Tajay, but there is obviously some risk involved always. Spags is basically family at this point. Let's go money hat and Zach. We can have this conversation. I do want to get back to the Trey McBride conversation as well. But do you have any thoughts on the Texas guys, Mitchell, Worthy, and Sanders?
I think they're all kind of stinky. I think the Texas guys and the FSU guys both not doing it for me overall. Adonai Mitchell, 0.33 EPA per target. He had some success downfield in terms of like the visual plays that film guys like, but numerically was not that good downfield either, only a 0.6 EPA. So to me, like he's young and he's 6'4". I think those are the positives for him, but 23% target per out run rate, not a guy for me. Worthy, a little bit better in targets, 29% target per out run rate, but only a 0.12 EPA. He also wasn't that great in the slot and wasn't great out wide. So those are some red flags for me. Sanders is okay. Jatavian Sanders is like a tight end who I think has a shot to get some draft capital. I feel like him, Jaheim Bell, Ben Sinnott are the three tight ends I feel comfortable taking, 17th, 18th, 19th, 20th round. But tight end this year is not tight end from last year. So hopefully some of these guys have good numbers because it's basically Brock Bowers and everybody else at tight end this year.
All right. I also wanted to, so now we're coming back around to us, but the Trey McBride thing. So I've been doing the Trey McBride with Marvin Harrison Jr. Like I've been doing that stack a good amount, trying to do that with then Kyler, obviously. Part of me is like, is Trey McBride, do you think his ADP right now is fair if they add Marvin Harrison Jr.? So for a little while, I was drafting him like as early as like the 40th pick. I was taking Trey McBride because I'm like, he was just fed the ball. He was great last year. But then part of me is like, well, if they do add Marvin Harrison Jr., like, is he going to lose? Like, is the new target competition going to be so good? And of course, they also are going to have Marquise Brown. I think is
Well, he's a free agent, so they might.
Oh, he is. Okay, so you think that? Okay. Either way, am I right to be concerned about drafting them together because it would almost be worst case scenario for Trey McBride if they do draft Marvin Harrison Jr., or do you think that there is enough targets to go around for both at current ADPs?
I agree with your take. That's actually been part of my reservation with Trey McBride is he's really gotten steamed up. I still take him from time to time because, again, you got to take him at ADP if you're going to take him. But I think for him, like part of his success in the back half of last year is because there was no wide receiver one, let alone there was really not a wide receiver 2 or 3 there either. So I think he's artificially inflated because of that. That said, with having Harrison out there, I think the target tree could be kind of like Detroit's was, where it's one receiver, one tight end who gets most of the work. So I'm okay with it, but I agree that like McBride is probably one of the guys who falls a lot over the course of this time to BBM.
All right, so we have clearly your guy, Christian Watson, and another rookie, and then of course several other options. Who do you like here? Do we go with your guy?
I don't mind either. Whoever you want to take out of the two. I know you have a Green Bay, a little bit of anti. I don't mind Brian Thomas. He's got a shot to go somewhere, but Watson's
I'm gonna go Watson because I know that he is your guy. I feel like we gotta stay on brand here and take your guys because they both kind of fell to us like perfectly in this draft. I have a Green Bay bias, but I don't hate draft. I actually draft a good amount of Aaron Jones also. And I think, sadly, I think Jordan Love might actually be good. So I don't hate that pick at all.
Minnesota's going to be okay though. They're either going to bring Kirk back or they're going to get, I think, McCarthy. I would love them to get Jaden Daniels. If they got Jaden Daniels, Neil, you would be in a world of joy. I think for everything that would happen for both the pass game and for him. I think Brian Thomas probably a little bit too frothy in terms of what we talked about earlier. People really getting frothy for the rookies, but I like him. I think that. For him, I'm saying this for Neil's sake, but also I like showing off that I know something. Brian Thomas was very good last year for LSU, but I think the reason he was good is because he had Malik Neighbors working underneath, taking a lot of attention away. So that's the risk point. If Brian Thomas goes somewhere and he's expected to be the wide receiver 1, he's probably not going to be able to do that. But if he goes to Dallas, it's like their Brandon Cooks replacement. He might be an even better version of that. So that's the hope for him as he goes somewhere. And he's one of the rare guys where I think he'd be better off being a wide receiver too.
Interesting. So I don't want to tell everybody like everything that you say in your rookies video because
that's fine. It's all free. It's
okay. Yeah, that's true. It was all free. But I will say that I know that you liked Troy Franklin better than Brian Johnson. Like that was one of my the things that I noticed was like you were talking about your 4 receivers, your 4 favorites, and it was the top 3 Harrison, Neighbors, and Odunze. But then your fourth was not Brian Johnson. It was Troy Franklin. So I wasn't sure if you were like, or sorry, Brian Thomas. I keep calling him Brian Johnson. You like Troy Franklin quite a bit.
Yeah, Troy Franklin's numbers are like from an alien, basically, in terms of the advanced analytics stuff that I look at. 0.7 EPA per target, which is just tremendous. He's basically adding, again, 0.7 of a point every time he's getting targeted. 0.6 EPA out wide, 6.6 targets out wide. Downfield, again, another guy who's a beast downfield, 1.8 D targets per game, 1.2 EPA there. He's not going to be like a red zone target hound, but he's great. But we can talk more about him in a minute.
All right.
I don't hate Najee here, to be honest, okay. but we have Miami. I would maybe consider Mostert.
Interesting. We don't have Felix and Chad. I was also going to say we could reach for Downs here, but is it too early for Downs, you think?
I think you could push Downs potentially. Yeah. At this point, I think you could push Downs. Right. I would go Najee or Raheem Mostert, and we probably don't need Kyler, even though we could play the Arizona thing like you talked about.
Yeah. Okay. I think I'm good with that, and then we can. If we don't get Downs, we could always take Franklin at 104. He might fall to us, although he's been getting steamed up a little bit. Franklin used to be.
He gets away from me a lot in rooms, but you got to take Franklin. I would say high 90s at the latest.
Yeah, I've seen people take him. I've literally seen people take him in like 70s. I was like,
he's great, man. He's a lot of fun. He's definitely, if Odunze is not that guy, Troy Franklin will be, like, I think more of that downfield target that actually has some juice and a little bit lanky. Like, he's not a Mike Evans kind of build like Odunze is, but he's I think got a lot of juice. And Oregon was also kind of video gamey, but not in the same way where it was real targets he got and he made him look great.
Okay. Sean says, yes, they do. This is best ball for next year already, where we don't know which teams these guys are going to be on. We don't have schedules. We don't know anything. We're just degenerates. Zach, appreciating your info. Yeah. It's, I don't know. I think it is helpful to start drafting pretty early. I think it's also like, by the time I'm drafting in September, I will have completely forgotten everything that I drafted right now. Like I'll have no memory of these drafts that I did early on, most likely. But I do think it's helpful to just kind of get an idea of where players are falling, where you can like expect where when you can push players, that kind of thing. I think it is helpful to get started pretty early, although it's
I agree with that too. I always say that to people, like if you're going to try to max out BBM, like try to max out a puppy or something first, or like one of the smaller 20 entry ones, but like you really it is a muscle memory based activity for the most part. And I think for me as a content creator too, like I like doing the drafts daily because it gives you a touch point and people can see, and you also build up a catalog of things for people to watch, hopefully. But I think for drafting early, the advantage is really you draft early, so you have an advantage of the next part of the draft cycle. You draft in that draft cycle early, so you're heading BBM. Like that's sort of how I would try to approach it if you have the bankroll and can afford for a company to hold your money for another 11 months.
Yeah. I mean, from a content standpoint, it's obviously great for us. It's just like it's something that drives conversation. Like, a lot of these players, as they come up, it's like, oh yeah, I wanted to ask you about this player. Like, and otherwise I might not have remembered that I wanted to talk to you about Troy Franklin versus Brian Thomas, that kind of thing. So it is, I kind of like doing drafts for content just as like a thing that drives the conversation kind of. But even if you're not doing content, I did it a ton last year. Even when I wasn't doing content, I was doing a lot of drafts. I think it's useful in that way as well. All right, our pick is coming up, and by the way,
Franklin did go, so we are not going to get him. He goes at the 8-9 turn, which is fine, but that's Troy Franklin capital, and he's worth it, guys. Is what I would say. He should be at least where Brian Thomas is in terms of the ADP.
I got to say, Dallas Goedert at 96. I've seen him fall as much as 120. Like he's really been falling in drafts a little bit. Our pick is coming up.
He wasn't good last year, though, man. I think it's the offense's fault, but it's a new situation with Kellen Moore, I guess. But it's definitely one of those things for Dallas Goedert. People, you really got to be price conscious in the big board too. I think for vets, because again, we talked about the Hayden Winks thing. This guy took him 15 spots ahead. A lot of people are getting him 15 spots after. There goes Jared Goff, by the way.
Interesting. Why? Yeah. Does he have anybody from Detroit? He does not.
No. And unstack Jared Goff, the worst version of Jared Goff to have.
Like literally, yeah. He does not run at all. But all right, enjoy.
It doesn't hurt us because we have AR who's a trump card over Jared Goff. We now just have to find another stack to add on later. But
all right, so now I think we take our guy Downs now because he's not coming back to us.
That works.
Complete our stack.
Yeah, a little more wide receivers on the board, I feel like, than sometimes happens in my stream rooms where it is like you're already completely drowned out by 100. I've been taking Deontay Johnson a lot lately, which I don't feel great about the Arthur Smith of it all, but the Arthur Smith thing is going to drive these guys down further over the course of an offseason, but they're still too cheap, and they're probably going to be they'll be too cheap at 120, but they're too cheap at 100, and Pickens going 70s.
Right. Yeah, no, I like Deontay. Like he would have been my preference for Downs in a vacuum, I think, over Downs. But since we have the stack, I think you gotta, and we did not already have Pittman, I think makes sense to take Josh Downs in our case.
Well, Downs too could go up hugely if somehow Pittman didn't come back. Like he's a free agent too. Very likely they'll land on a deal or tag him. But I think for Downs, like he does have that out where if Pittman doesn't come back, he's going to be the every down slot guy, and he's a much better target earner than Alec Pierce, even though they obviously would upgrade if they lost Pittman.
Yeah, true. I was about to say, well, he took Jared Goff. I kind of love the fallback option of the rookie quarterbacks. Like the top, really just the top three are all I'm drafting, but kind of feels like I like the ADPs on all of Jaden Daniels, who of course went Caleb Williams go. So we lost out on these rookie quarterbacks, but I've frequently been able to just like take these guys pretty late. And I kind of love the ADP as a fallback on those rookies.
I agree.
All right, we are back on the clock. We could take Jameson Williams and
really trade it up. I mean,
really,
I don't hate it. You could do Tua if you wanted to correlate, though.
Oh, good point. Yeah, Tua makes a ton of sense for us here.
Yeah, I don't know what else we would stack him up with at this point. And I also, frankly, Tua is just, I'm kind of out on the Tua experience, at least as a best ball play, just because of the fact that like there's by the end of the year, there were like 20 QBs who were beating him on a weekly basis, which is a little bit tough. And it doesn't even make sense relative to what we know of DFS, where if his stack partners are doing anything, he should have some value. But I think for our build here, we have Tua, we have Mostert. I think we're just making a bet against Achane and Tyreek. So I think for us, it works. Tua's got to run more to pay off any ADP at this point.
Yeah. Surprising that he's not better than he is, given how good Miami's offense was last year. But I think he's fine at ADP here. When we already have Anthony Richardson, I works there.
He's carrying the water. It's fine. Yeah. Daniels, though, would have been a fun QB with AR. If we had gotten him at that pick, I think there's a world. It's, and obviously Neil and I talk a lot about with everything you do. You talk about ownership, you talk about probabilities. There's a world of probabilities where Jaden Daniels becomes Miami's quarterback. And it's like, I don't know what the odds are, but they could move on from Tua. Like this is the year they either have to, shit or get off the pot with Tua. And I think it wouldn't be crazy to try to get off the pot.
Interesting. I can't believe you're talking this much shit after Nick was in chat, giving us props, saying nice things. You're coming in here and shitting on Tua. I can't believe
he's got to have questions too. Even if you are the most in the bag, like Dolphins fan, like, I don't know, you can watch the playoffs or watch the back half of the season again and go like, I'm on a level with Mahomes. Like I compete with Mahomes. Like you're not even going to win the AFC, I think, at this point. So not that you tear it all down and you just try over again, but if you have a shot to take a QB that, could be more mobile and get the ball downfield at a similar success rate, and you have the gut feeling that Tua might be being carried by the offense and the play calling a little bit, I would try to upgrade. Like, do you think that team wins a Super Bowl maybe with Kirk Cousins? I think they're closer.
Sorry, I got distracted for a second. Oh. Do I think the Vikings win with Kirk Cousins?
No, the Dolphins, if they upgrade to like Kirk Cousins, like I think they're probably not winning it, but they're maybe in the AFC title game.
It's funny. I feel like 2 years in a row, it's been like the Dolphins are so good early on. And I'm like, why did I not just stack Tua with Tyreek Hill everywhere? And then by the end of the year, it's like they kind of fell off a little bit. I mean, you clearly wanted Tyreek Hill, but like the Tua part of it. Yeah, it's interesting how he went from like early on, felt like he was going to be a potential MVP candidate to like, is he really a quarterback? And, early on it was like you were watching the videos of like, well, if you just reverse it and he looks right-handed, he suddenly looks amazing, all that kind of stuff. There was so much Tua hype early on. And then by the end of the year, it was kind of like, I don't know if this guy is it. He might not be it. So, I don't know. Yeah, Kirk Cousins definitely would, I think, be an upgrade over Tua.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that's where I run the submissions with Tua overall. But again, if you make the bet on Miami, any draft you're making is, a lot of people watching also know. But if for some reason the guys who are watching for the first time make a pick, you're making a pick that you're right in your draft, and that guy has the best season ever. So for us, Tua is going to have his best season ever. He's going to be running 10 times a game.
Yeah, we're counting on it at this point. Interesting. None of the usually there's a couple tight ends right around here that are interested in me. They have already gone off the board. Little tight end heavy room. That's another conversation that I wanted to have with you, but we got to wait until after we make our pick here. So we have 2 quarterbacks, 2 running backs, 5 wide receivers, and a tight end. I'd be fine taking either of these running backs. I think you're not high on Keon Coleman. Is that correct?
Yeah, I would go Sharps.
Let's go Sharps.
Ambiguous backfield for him. Quote came out today, which I think people are going to read into too much the wrong way. So Seattle, interesting things that they did. They hired the University of Washington's offensive coordinator to be their offensive coordinator after he was going to go to Bama with his head coach, and then they won him over. He forced the ball downfield really aggressively last year. But then Mike McDonald said today that they're going to establish the run. That's their goal, is to run on first down, whatever. Like, then used to set up play action. People are going to read into that first part and go like, oh, he's saying they want to establish the run. I don't think that that's exactly what it means. I think it's going to be they're going to use the run to set up the pass, which is still a logical thing to do, even if you should probably pass on every down. And for a new coach coming in, ambiguous backfields, I always like to target. So there's an 80 pick discrepancy between Walker and Charbonnet, and I just don't think that's correct.
I think that's really sharp. That is a really good point, because Charbonnet, I feel like he was better later in the year as well. I don't know if that's based on actual stats, but I believe
they trusted him more. They trusted him with pass protection. They the thing with Walker was he got all that red zone work early on, which is great, but red zone work can go away if you can't block another downs. And if you're also doing the thing that Walker does where he runs 3 yards backwards, then runs forwards. And I think teams, a team that's going to really try to win with its defense, I think could fall in love with Charbonnet. So for me, it's any ambiguous backfield, but I think for Seattle in particular, if Walker's not hitting home runs, I think they're going to have less patience for him.
Yeah. Xavier Worthy goes, another wide receiver, rookie wide receiver. All right, let's see who we got coming up. Blake Corum, Trey Benson. We could go, Jerry Jeudy if he falls. Sounded like you're not very high on Lad McConkey.
I'm not. There's one guy who's newer to our Splash Play community, Adam, who's like a big Georgia fan, who's been really trying to sell me on Lad. People out there like him. I know Hayden Winks has also talked positively of him. I probably at this range would take the shot on Gabe or Jeudy over him. But, you got to get exposure to different guys. And maybe the quest to find a Puka this year is going to lead people to a lot more Lad McConkey types. And I kind of think that he's more of the Hunter Renfrow school of things than he is a Puka.
Okay. Do you want to go Gabe here, or do you want to go with any of these running backs in this range?
We got our second QB. I think let's go Gabe, and then we can go on a little bit of a running back run.
Okay.
Because Blake Corum could fall. Blake Corum now, I'm hopefully single-handedly responsible for it, but I went off on some guy about Blake Corum on chat the other week, and now I'm seeing him reliably in my rooms go in the 150s. But Blake Corum's too small. He doesn't avoid tackles at all. People are really biased to him because Michigan is the most public college football team now. And he had a 10% avoided tackle rate in college, which is egregiously bad, worse than Deuce Vaughn was last year. And there's a shot that's, Jim Harbaugh brings the gang back together, whatever, in Los Angeles. But I think for Blake Corum, that he's one of the guys to me that we talked about earlier. You highlight guys that are maybe a little bit overvalued, and then you just get them for cheaper later on. I think Corum, to me, I don't see how he'll come out of the combine smelling like roses. I think he's going to be a lot of warts that come up with that.
Interesting. First of all, Colt start. Good to see you, Colt start. And then Felix says, did somebody say Najee today? I was actually going to make the joke earlier that the reason I took Raheem Mostert over Najee was because I hadn't seen Felix in chat yet. I'm just not going to draft him until I see Felix. So we actually took Raheem Mostert to continue a Dolphin stack over Najee. But I think everybody is kind of back in on Najee this year. Are you also sort of back in on Najee a little bit?
He's priced appropriately. I Felix is, and to Neil, a pro tip for you: if you say nice things about Najee, sometimes Felix will gift some memberships to your channel too. Keep in mind when you're chasing those down. But yeah, no, for Najee, I think he was good. I think Jalen Warren's better, but I see the utility in having both backs, and Najee, I don't know if he's a better goal line back, but he does fit the historical archetype of what that is. And I think you're probably going to get a little bit of historical archetyping with Arthur Smith in there. So he's appropriately priced. If he came up to the 70s again, I'd be back doing that same dance as last year.
All right. So it's coming back around to us. So what I was going to say earlier is, so I noticed you said in a video yesterday that you are more comfortable than ever pushing tight ends and quarterbacks. And I feel like I've been doing the opposite. I basically have 2 tight ends almost every draft, by Dallas Goedert, being the last tight end usually I take, and maybe it's just because I get sucked into oh my God, Travis Kelce is so late. Sam Laporta I usually only take if I am correlating with Amon-Ra, so I usually take him with Amon-Ra. But Sam Laporta, there are just so many tight ends that suck me in, where it's Sam Laporta, love that. Then you got the Trey McBride, Mark Andrews, and Travis Kelce are all kind of in a little range. And I'm by that point, often I am already trying to correlate. And then if I'm not, then it's like, okay, well now Evan Ingram, this sets up nicely to potentially do a Jaguars stack if I've taken either of the Jaguars receivers, or I like where David Njoku's going. And then I feel like Kyle Pitts is a bounce back candidate with new head coach, new quarterback, and it just like I feel like, and now we got the rookie, what's his name,
Brock Bowers.
Brock Brower. So I'm like, I feel like I'm always taking, because then it's like, to me it gets ugly after like Dallas Goedert, but then again it doesn't get that ugly. So I don't know, I go back and forth. I feel like I often draft, maybe I need to be pushing more, because like Dalton Schultz also, like he's going to be good with CJ Stroud most likely. I have some concerns about Luke Musgrave, just because I think that Tyler Kraft might eat into him somewhat. But then like Darren Waller is a fair price. So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I need to be doing more of what you're doing. But I feel like I've just been like, often it gets to a point where it's like this range is so ugly with the running backs and quarterback and wide receivers that I'm just like, I guess I'll just take one of the stud tight ends instead, which maybe that's a leak for me. I don't know.
Yeah, I think tight end and quarterback are very deep this year, where I could go, 20 to 25 deep at both those positions and feel like if I'm getting, 2 or 3 of them at that point, I feel pretty okay. So I think that's where it is that like, Freermuth still being here, Mayer, like I think Mayer's still got a lot of upside left to tap. I think that's where I view it more so. I could see falling into the trap. Like I think it's a lot deeper everywhere in every round. Anybody you have a lean for here? I feel like Benson's not a bad discount at this point.
I feel like just because of the discount, I'd go Benson here. Yeah.
I like Irving more. I like Kendra more, but I think Benson, that's too cheap to get Benson falling you.
Yeah. And now I feel like we're likely to be able to get one of these, or we could take Michael Mayer coming back too. I guess Michael Mayer is like the hard. Sometimes I take likely. I guess I keep on expanding. Yeah, I think that this is really the likely is like the hard cap of where I want to end tight ends, because it gets so ugly after Isaiah.
I don't know. Noah Fant, Hunter Henry, both guys free agents. Noah Fant and heading into his second contract, so that's something too where a lot of tight ends take the leap there. Everett, I'm not as into. Dulcich, though, I think could be back finally healthy. Brevin Jordan, a shot that Schultz doesn't come back in free agency. Obviously, Houston's got a lot of cap room, so they can bring him back. I don't know. I think there's a lot of guys you can make the case for, and Ben Sinnott is the one too that he needs to test well athletically. But if he does test well athletically, he is a very unique weapon at tight end that I think somebody will take advantage of. Davis Allen too. Davis Allen's a little bit low because he's going to play next year. Tyler Higbee either going to get cut or not be back for the first 2/3 of the year. So Davis Allen will get his shot to be the starter most likely. Obviously, they could bring in somebody else. Yeah, I don't know. Tight end QB, I think you could skim late. It's just a matter of the different looks.
Yeah, I guess there are risks involved, but if you take 3 of those late round guys, like there is upside in a number of those guys. So maybe I'm making a mistake by not pushing it a little bit more than I have been. I just always find myself getting sucked into like, ooh, I can take Mahomes and Kelsey at this turn, or like I take I love taking Lamar, and then it's like, well, often Andrews will fall to me as his pass catching option because people are taking Flowers earlier than Lamar or earlier than Andrews. So I end up taking Andrews there. I don't know. I get sucked into the early tight ends a lot.
If you're taking an early elite QB, I think it makes the math start to, be very hard to avoid, I guess, if nothing else.
Yeah.
But I'm also just like, I don't love elite QB, even AR. I have a tough time paying that price tag, but
so all of the running backs that I liked were taken. So I would just go Mayer probably.
Yeah, I think that works. I think he can take a big jump upwards.
I thought it was likely that one of Irving, McLaughlin, there are just so many that I like. But Mayer, I feel like has some upside there. So I like throwing him in there. This range, I often find myself drafting running backs in this range. And Jaleel McLaughlin for me has been just like I treat him like he is an RB2 on his team with RB1 upside. Like he's just like showed enough juice that I'm like, he could take a leap and actually pass. What's his name for the starting job? Javonte Williams for the starting job. So I've been drafting a ton of Jaleel McLaughlin. He feels relatively like it feels like a high floor, high upside guy to me that I like in this range. Estime, again, I told you kind of talked me into Estime. So I do draft a lot of Estime in this round. Probably more than I should. Probably taking on too much there.
No such thing. But with McLaughlin, the one thing for him is that they still had P. Ryan working in for pass downs down the stretch, which showed they didn't have the full trust. It was his rookie year, so you give him some grace on that. But I worry, I guess I shouldn't worry as much because it isn't an ambiguous, coaching situation where, they're bringing in Pete Carmichael as their another Saints vestige guy who's probably, also going to reward short game touches that could help McLaughlin. But I think once Javonte got full health, they were relying on Javonte so much that I would view him more as the bell cow, and McLaughlin is probably a change of pace. But I could be wrong about that. I just feel like Jaleel McLaughlin came in with so little draft capital and so little pedigree. Those guys I tend to have a hard time recontextualizing for where they are now. And I think he probably deserves being recontextualized. So that's a fair. I would prefer Bucky in that range. And I think Keaton Mitchell, though he's got the ACL, obviously, that's going to keep him out for a while. Yeah, but McLaughlin probably a little bit undervalued. Definitely how I'm viewing it, at least.
Yeah, Keaton Mitchell, I've just been afraid of the ACL, and maybe I need to stop being like Jonathan Brooks. I drafted a good amount, but then I've kind of laid off because I'm like, but he's not going to return for a while. And then like, is he really going to be a good, like when he returns in late August, early November, whatever, like, is he going to have any juice at that point? Like sometimes it takes a little while to recover. So I'm a little bit scared of these ACL guys. Maybe it doesn't take as long as I think it does to recover from these things.
The rookies coming in, I'm really mindful of because I was so in on Kendre Miller last year, and I think he kind of got a good run out for the opportunities around him where Kamara was suspended to start the year. Williams got hurt, but then he was still hurt and he had never gotten all the way ready to go in the preseason. And because of that, he could never get out from behind the 8-ball. And I think that's something for me this year where for Jonathan Brooks, like he's likely going to be out until October, and then he's back in practice. And maybe there's a shot he beats the recovery. He's younger, so he could do that. But if he doesn't beat the recovery and then he's getting on the field in October, he's then got to earn a role over the course of the next, 8 weeks, basically, to be useful for you in the playoffs. Right. It's really hard to do if there's an incumbent there who's got anything left at all, or just they know the offense better. And I think that's one of the things where, talent matters a lot, but the situation working out for you, like Achane getting on the field because he had the speed helped him get there. But like really that situation wasn't perfect for him either. He just was great in the touches and the offense was very creative. So you need guys that can kind of get to a bell cow role. And I think for, a guy like Brooks, he has to get drafted so highly to incentivize them to do that.
I think you laid it up perfectly. Like my concern is just like, yeah, he's going to return then. Like if he returned then, and I knew at that point he's going to like immediately be inserted and he's going to be like, he's going to have the juice that he had previously, then yeah, for sure. I'd be into that. Like, I don't care that he missed a few weeks, but like, I have concerns that like the team isn't going to want to put him, in right away. And also he might not have the juice immediately. Like it takes some time to recover. So I think you laid out nicely some of the
and he's a great player, to be clear. I think he's actually the best of the Texas prospects, but the ACL, like if he were himself coming in, he'd probably be he'd be ahead of estimate, I think, for me in terms of this the running backs in this class. But he's not. He tore his ACL recently enough and had surgery late November. So it's tough to expect him to be out there and then be able to really climb the depth chart. Like that's one thing I think people really miss, myself included, in previous years.
All right, so these two rookie running backs are two that I have been drafting a lot of: Marshawn Lloyd and Ray Davis.
Lloyd,
do you like any? All right, yes. I mean, also another falling down in terms of he didn't fall that far past ADP, but
did Buy Him For sell you on Ray Davis at all when you talked to him?
I don't think. I think listening to Buy Him For, but I don't think our conversation we didn't actually talk about specific players. But yeah, I think he sold me on Ray Davis a little bit. Sounds like you are a non-believer in Ray Davis.
I just think Marshawn Lloyd is an infinitely better prospect. He's younger by a little bit, though. Actually, no, he's 23, so Ray Davis is 24. But Lloyd has a ton of juice in terms of the avoided tackle rate stuff. He was. I'm pulling up the numbers here because I think it's like so crazy that he was able to do what he did. 37% avoided tackle rate on run plays last year. He only had 12 opportunities a game, so not a lot of volume there, but best avoided tackle rate in the class. To contextualize it, the best guys last year were Bijan and Roshan Johnson at 33%. So Marshawn Lloyd ahead there. In the pass game, though, which again, not targeted a bunch, just 2 targets a game, an 85% avoided tackle rate in the pass game. So like, that right there to me screams some amount of Darren Sprolesiness to him, in addition to the fact that he is a plus EPA receiver, plus EPA back in terms of the run plays as well. So I like Lloyd. I think for guys like Ray Davis, it's just when you're that old and you have an injury history, it can be tough to get out of it. So I really I saw Buy Him For's Twitter thread about him. I was like, that's interesting, but like, I just don't think he can get drafted well enough to hit the field. And I think he's going to more like a Dwayne McBride type where good college numbers, and then how do you get on the field? Getting on the field is like as big of a battle as your actual talent.
Yeah, that is a good point. Getting on the field is, especially as a rookie, can be tough. Do we need any more? We probably need at least 1 or 2 more wide receivers. I don't love Gabe Davis is my final receiver.
No, we're a little thin for like we didn't go full extreme ZORB. I would say one more receiver at a minimum, could do two. Definitely needs more running backs and we need more tight ends.
I was gonna say Leggett is a guy that I think that you talked about in your video. Somebody kind of like, do you like any other receivers? Who do you like in this range? Any position, I guess.
Gus is a free agent who could. I like guys like Gus and AJ Dillon just because of the fact that they can luck onto a power back role and be a touchdown hound like a Jamal Williams has been in the past without any actual skill. Dobbins I like more as a talent, but the Achilles stuff, the more I've dug into that, scares me a lot. 2 straight Achilles injuries for him. A lot of guys, I actually don't think there's a historical precedent for a guy overcoming 2 Achilles injuries, which somebody could be the first, but I don't know if he will be.
So I've drafted a ton of Antonio Gibson here, just from the he had juice at one point. I know he kind of fell out of favor, but I'm like, he's a free agent who could find a landing spot where he gets a little bit more work, and I think has some talent, but I don't know. I probably draft 2. He's probably a guy I need to stop drafting quite as much as I do. But yeah, Antonio Gibson would have been the guy that I typically take here. I didn't even realize that Gus was a free agent though. So that's interesting.
Yeah, I try to be mindful of that because a lot of times with the big board in particular, like people really get driven down for free agency things where this didn't work out last year, but Miles Sanders was going for this is actually going to be a lot of guys. Miles Sanders was going incredibly cheap. Rashad Penny was going incredibly cheap. Then they land in landing spots where Sanders had a good contract. Situation didn't work out. And then for Penny, didn't get a good contract, was in the situation, didn't win the situation. But I think there's a good amount of bailout running backs. I don't want to spoil it because I don't want to ruin our guys. But there's a couple coming up that I think are really undervalued that don't reflect. People just don't know the team stuff yet about who's coming back and who's not.
Yeah, I think I watched your video yesterday, maybe, where you took one of probably my favorite late round running back, who will hopefully have the opportunity to draft.
Yeah, I think we're on the same page.
Yeah. Let's see. Bindle says, I just want to send a super chat. Damn it. Do I need to turn that on? I don't even know that you can't send to. I've never received a super chat.
You have to be a partner first. So you have to, you actually should qualify because I think you have 500 subs. I don't know if you've hit your watch time requirements or whatever. Okay. But yeah, as soon as you turn on your monetization stuff or apply for it and then they turn it on, then people can super chat you and do all that other stuff.
I wanted to bring that up specifically with Spags on here because Spags can explain it too. Because I'm like, I have no idea how that stuff works. I would get super chats to Stochastic. I never saw how that works. I have no idea how that stuff works. So yeah, thank you for explaining a little bit. Cook Start says that it's actually Kickstart. It's a KL. I tried to at him so many times, and it was like, why the fuck can I not at Kickstart? And then eventually learned that it's KL. So okay, it is still pronounced Kickstart. I figured that was the case, but I just it's kind of
or he could be starting a new click. You don't know.
Yeah. Bindles thinks Noah Fant we need to be considering as a late round guy. I kind of have mixed feelings on Noah Fant. Who is negging on the UFL? That's what I really want to know though.
They're going to be better, but
you said somebody could be. I see.
Yeah. I said like this. He'll probably play in the UFL. I think that's still a nice comp, especially now there's only one spring league. Like that's the game. And Neil, are you doing UFL this year? Are you willing to dive back in?
I think I'll be back in. I don't think I had a profitable year last year. So I had previously crowned myself the XFL champ, and then I think I lost money last year. I did win one contest, so maybe I don't know if I did, but I think that I will be back into it. It was not quite as soft. At least I didn't find it to be as soft as I had remembered it being. Like I thought, like in general, the guys who were drafted a ton last year did well. Like it was kind of like the chalk won out most of the time. So it was different than the 2020 version, maybe 2019. I forget the year. 2019 version where it was like it was just like the chalk had no correlation to who actually did well. That was not the case.
Yeah, 2020. That was there. There we go. There goes back.
Yeah. So that is. So we were on the same page there. Kenneth Gainwell, I feel like, is just. We are on the same.
So
page.
DeAndre Swift, a free agent. So that's the thing where he could come back. I don't necessarily think that's going to happen. And Gainwell is the last back left in the backfield. So yeah, it's insane that he goes at 200 reliably.
Yoshevich also one of my favorite late round wide receivers, but maybe need to be also considering. I mean, Malik Washington is here. Rashad Bateman is here. Who do you like here? I guess you said you like AJ Dillon. Who do you like?
I would take the Dobbins discount at this point, even though we talked about the injury stuff. He's been coming up enough in rooms that I think this is actually a decent discount for him. Again, really worry about the Achilles, but he's our RB7. So I wouldn't say he's a luxury, but he's a guy where if he gets in there, He's a guy that, by the way, I think would be a great fit for Minnesota. Like they want to get an appreciated asset and see if he can come back. Like he'd be an instant upgrade on Ty Chandler and Madison.
Yeah.
And and then we'll see if he can last.
So Malik Washington, I guess this is a guy that Buying For is big on. Malik Washington has been getting some steam there. Do you have any Malik Washington thoughts?
I am not very into him. I think he's just, again, like a lot of slot guys. And I think this is a big distinction from how I look at numbers versus some other guys do, is that like you got to look at where these guys are playing for the most part. And if you're just a pure slot guy, you're then in a group of everybody's a slot guy. Whereas if you can play out wide, like there's 4 guys in the class who actually grade out decently out wide, who got meaningful reps out there and were targeted at a high rate. And I think that's where some stuff gets missed. So from Malik Washington, I haven't seen anything numerically. I could take another look, but you talk me more into like Roman Wilson than you can Malik Washington. I think Malik Washington is one of those guys that's like purely Senior Bowl / a couple of influencers talking about him. And I don't really think that he's somebody that, I don't know, changes things for anybody.
Okay. Well, then we're gonna skip right past him.
Yeah, actually, I'm underselling him a little bit. Now that I'm looking at his numbers again.
Okay.
But I still, again, he's just, people get really frothy about fucking Senior Bowl stuff, and it drives me nuts.
I didn't even know that he played in the Senior Bowl. Javon Baker, another guy that I've seen get some steam from a couple different people. Do you have any thoughts on Javon Baker?
He's not on my radar. So he's okay numerically, but didn't earn targets at a high rate, 26.5% target per out run rate. 0.4 EPA is okay. I'd take Brendan Rice over him personally, but yeah, people, I think at this point, like this time last year, remember, like, I think it was Herzig who was really keeping for Tyler Scott, who then kind of had a shot on the Bears, but didn't really make it work. I'm a little leery of the hypey guys that didn't land for me. Oh, there we go.
Is that Jerry Rice's son?
Yes.
I don't believe I have a single share, so I was really excited to take him there. Maybe I'll have to start working him in. All right, who do you like? I guess I can pull up.
A.T. Perry is interesting because Michael Thomas not likely coming back. I still have no issue with Noah Fant if we wanted to take a third tight end at this point, but Perry or Noah Brown. Noah Brown's going to be a free agent. I guess we could go more Detroit bets too with Josh Reynolds. I'm okay with whoever you see on the board.
All right, let's go A.T. Perry. I have not drafted any A.T. Perry, so I'm good with taking him here, taking that shot. So you think Michael Thomas not coming back? Do you think he's going to retire?
No, I think he's going to try to go somewhere else. He would be a really nice depreciated asset for the Chiefs to pick up for cheap. That would instantly make him soar up 100 spots in ADP again and be right back to where we were last year. But he's already bashed the team on social media and stuff pretty regularly. So I don't think he'll go back, but I guess crazier things have happened in the game of wide receiver negotiations.
I had not seen that he was trashing them. That's funny. Josh Reynolds, I didn't know that he was a free agent. Still probably most likely to, like, I still think free agents, like, I think the most likely scenario for most of them is to go back to their team. Would you, maybe that's not the case.
Well, yeah, I guess it depends. But for Josh Reynolds, he was brought there specifically for Jared Goff because Jared Goff trusted him a lot from his Rams days. Was one of the things that I've touted him for years ago back in the ship chasing Thanksgiving streams. I think he comes back to Detroit. I think he just doesn't want to go somewhere else and follow the rotation again.
There's also a player, like, I think I've heard that Gabe Davis is like, there's no chance that he goes back to the Bills, or like Tyler Boyd. I don't really understand the situations for all of these guys, but I think I've heard like the Bengals just can't afford Tyler Boyd anymore, which is why I've been in on Yoshevich, because I'm like, well, he's probably the wide receiver 3. So it's,
I would be more in on Charlie Jones, I think, relative to that, because I mean, Yoshevich, I get the Yoshevich play. If T. Higgins left, Yoshevich goes up. Because Tyler Boyd's leaving, he's mostly out of the slot. It should be Charlie Jones, assuming they don't bring in somebody else. It should be Charlie Jones.
Okay. So I have not drafted. I don't think I've drafted any Charlie Jones. So these are why I like having guests on, because I'm like, I'm just falling into like, Yoshevich seemed to be pretty good last year. Probably
going to yell at me in chat, and that's how I learned things now. But
that's a good point too. Chat is helpful frequently. Yeah, that's why it's good to do these streams instead of just drafting solo. Because drafting solo, I just fall into like, Yoshevich was pretty good when he saw opportunities last year. He'll probably have more opportunities next year, so I'll take him late. But yeah, learning about guys like Charlie Jones, who I know nothing about. That's
if you want to win over Bindles, you take some Yoshevich for yourself. He'll be instantly on your team in the chat. But yeah, I think for the Bengals, like, who knows how it's going to be, but it seems like the most likely outcome is Chase and Higgins being back. Higgins getting the franchise tag. Like, I think that's been reported enough now that the Bengals are probably talking to somebody about it. So, that makes it tough for me to really love Yoshevich or Jones, but there's going to be routes there. I think Jones will get them because Yoshevich doesn't have the refinement to work out of the slot, I don't think.
Okay. Interesting. Another guy I've drafted a ton of is Israel Abanikanda. Again, based on I think listening to Karain and maybe buying four as well. People seem to think that he's going to be the running back 2 for the Jets. Is that your assumption here that he's going to be the running back 2 for the Jets? Do you like Izzy?
I think he's a pure handcuff, and I'm actually trying to avoid pure handcuffs more because that's been a trap for me now. 2 straight years. Last year with Elijah Mitchell, the year before with Naheem Hines. With the Elijah Mitchell part, didn't really hit the outcome there where I thought he'd be getting some work and then contingent value if he didn't get there. But then for Naheem Hines, that was the year before where Jonathan Taylor actually got hurt. But then Hines was hurt as well at the same time frame, didn't go off, got traded to Buffalo. So I'm out of the pure handcuff game. I have to really see a guy getting, I would say, a 33% share to kind of trust him. He's got to be giving me a projection every week, I think, for me to go there. And for Izzy, if you think Breece Hall is worth a first round pick, Izzy inherently is almost worth nothing, I think.
Interesting. All right. Anybody that you're in love with in this range?
Alec Pierce, I would take one more flyer on with AR.
That makes sense. Just add him to our stack a little bit.
Yeah, and again, this one looks a lot better if Pittman doesn't come back. So
with Antonio Gibson being a free agent, does Chris Rodriguez become interesting to you?
Ambiguous backfield, so that's always a positive. I think that he has utility there. I think he's also kind of just the guy and was lucky to get the opportunity he got last year when he had that 2 touchdown game. So I would take a shot on Tank more than I would him. I think Tank, I know some of the guys in the chat have pushed back, our guy Tyler in particular. Tank and Kyron, not dissimilar from their year to years. Kyron had maybe a little more of an injury excuse. Tank got opportunity and then just lost it because he was terrible. But Tank coming in another year, we know that the Jacksonville staff kind of, wanes a little bit with Travis Etienne. So Bigsby in year 2. Any guy who's coming into year 2, I think is worth a dart, just in the hopes that something changes materially for him over the course of the next 6 months.
Okay. And I know you said you have a hard out like right now.
Oh, I just have to go pick up the kid from daycare, so I'm good.
Okay, so we can make it through the draft. All right. Matt said he got sniped on Burrow, unstacked earlier today in took Mixon. Okay, that what else? Oh yeah. Zach asked, do you think Ayuk stays with the 49ers? Do you have any thoughts on that, Spags?
They would be stupid to get rid of him, but if he complains loudly enough and makes it toxic enough, maybe they don't. But Debo's done that too, and it didn't work for him. He just got paid, which I guess was the goal anyway. But I don't know. There's been a lot of things. See, like Sauce Gardner was tweeting about how the Niners don't use Ayuk correctly, and how they should just be forcing the ball instead of getting rid of the ball as often as they do. So it's possible, but he would really have to force his way out.
All right, we have the opportunity to take one of your guys, one guy that you've talked about a good amount. Do we go there? Is there anybody else that you prefer? Do you want a different position?
I wouldn't hate a third tight end, but I think you don't. There's nobody left, right?
Dawson
not really. And I think Sinnott even got taken. So yeah, let's do Johnny Wilson. Johnny Wilson's fun. He's 6'7", didn't run enough routes, but earned targets at a high level. And he acquitted himself well at the Senior Bowl. Not that matters. I think the data matters more, but not a lot of there's nobody else who's 6'7" in this class. So he's got that going for him, if nothing else.
Nice. I realized I was looking for him, and he is here. Tanner Hudson is a guy that I take flyers on sometimes. I'm like, I feel like he's a good receiving tight end. So occasionally I take him as just like maybe he they seem to not really love Irv Smith last year. Maybe he becomes a little bit more involved in the offense. He's kind of one of my late round tight ends that I think about sometimes.
He's a risk that they bring in somebody else, whether it be a vet to usurp him. But I think that he's an okay play. And Johnny Wilson might be a tight end 3. Bindles is probably correct.
Sadly, not going to be TE eligible. Much like Taysom is no longer tight end eligible. R.I.P. Taysom tight end eligibility.
Terrible QB pick at any range.
Yeah, I took him in a draft. I've taken him exactly once, and it was only because I had Derek Carr as my quarterback too, and I was like, I kind of need a third quarterback on this team, and literally any quarterback I have any interest in is dead. But I took him, and I was like, it's probably not even worth it still. Like, it's just as a quarterback play, it's still not worth it. So yeah, I agree with you. Just not.
They just paid Derek Carr. Like, Derek Carr's contract makes it now impossible for them to do anything. So they would have to be eating literally like almost $100 million for the next 2 years.
Yeah.
So I think Taysom is locked into his role. And even then last year, I know two guys that really stood out to me down the back half last year because of what they didn't do for my DK Millie Maker team that made the finals, Jerry Jeudy and Taysom Hill. The usage for Taysom Hill fell off of a cliff in the back half of last year. And he got there with like a couple touchdown, or he got a touchdown, maybe two in that last game. But like he was playing like 10 snaps. Like they fell back out of love with him for whatever reason.
Yeah. All right, our draft is done. Spags needs to get out of here. I do want to read off.
Wow, you're 56 drafts in already, Neil. Wow, it's impressive.
Yeah. So our final team here, we have Anthony Richardson and Tua as a quarterback. I think that's a pretty strong quarterback room. We then have Tyjae Spears, our first running back at pick 65. Raheem Mostert, Zach Charbonnet, Trey Benson, Marshawn Lloyd, Gus Edwards, J.K. Dobbins at running back. At wide receiver, we have Amon-Ra St. Brown, Marvin Harrison Jr., Jalen Waddle, Christian Watson, Josh Downs, Gabe Davis, A.T. Perry, Alec Pierce, and Johnny Wilson. Tight ends, Sam Laporta, Michael Mayer. We capped it at just 2 tight ends. How do you feel about this draft? Any takeaways, any positions you feel like any spots you wish we would have done something differently?
I would have liked to have gotten like a Noah Fant / Hunter Henry tier third receiver or third tight end in there and one less receiver. I think would be one thing that would help this team out. I like that we got Pierce Slate for free. I think that's appropriate for how bad he was last year.
Yeah.
The running backs, I think we did okay at running back. Feels like a very top 3 heavy kind of running back room, but for where we got the value, like I feel good about Spears' role. I think Mostert's undervalued. I think Charbonnet is potentially very undervalued. So I think we worked it well. A good team draft and very well correlated. We got the stacks that we needed to. So I think we did well on that front.
Yep, agreed. I feel pretty good about it overall. It's not an A+ draft. We didn't have a lot of like super values fall to us. We got sniped a couple times. Jared Goff going unstacked was hurt us a little bit, but overall, I feel okay about this draft. Vindles, yes, I am a sicko. That is true. RBs are the only hit pieces. And then Felix says we should have gone with Najee. So a lot of. I guess we missed our opportunity. You should have been here sooner, Felix. We could have taken Najee, but we weren't going to take him when you weren't here. I'm not going to do it. All right, Spags. I know we need to let you get going, but where can people find you?
Every Monday to Friday, 11 a.m. doing a draft on Splash Play at Splash Play Pod on YouTube. I think Neil was kind enough to put some links in the description too. So check it out there for you whenever you need. And Neil, I was going to say see you off camera too, but you need any advice on anything, need any help with anything, I'm here. I'm sure much like the people watching the stream, we all want to see you do well and make the most of the opportunity because your content's been a joy to watch for years now. So I'm excited to see you doing this venture, whether you go solo fully or you go figure something out in between. But it's an exciting thing. It's just, now the work really begins. And we, as you know, Neil, we both love hard work so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I really, really appreciate that, Spags. And I'm sure I will have questions for you because I see you doing the content, great content consistently, much better thumbnails than mine. I have a lot of questions on how to get the content game. And hopefully you and I will collaborate more throughout the spring, the summer, et cetera, because I love doing streams with you. But really appreciate you coming on. Yes, the links for some of Spags' stuff, his Twitter, his YouTube, those are in the description of this video. Go check those out if you haven't already. So go check out those rookie videos because they are fantastic. Thank you all for hanging out with us as we did this draft. We are going to get going, and I'll catch you next time.